the group of youngsters who were left behind, they brought their tractors out. I suspect there was an argument because it was really touching in the way that people responded and how they did things.
Many people who follow the royal family know Princess Anne as calm, serious, and deeply loyal to tradition. But not everyone sees how far she is willing to go when rules are broken. Behind the quiet image, a new controversy is now beginning to unfold. Some reports claim that Camilla's daughter has been pulled into a legal dispute over the use of Balmoral. Could this spark a major crisis inside the palace? Did Camilla's family really go too far? Or is the situation being blown out of proportion? The loyal custodian of Balmoral. Born on August 15, 1950, Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise entered a world defined by history and expectation. As the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, she grew up at the very heart of the British monarchy. But from an early age, it became clear that Anne was not interested in simply carrying a title. She absorbed the traditions around her, learning not just what the monarchy is, but what it demands from those who represent it. Over the years, while other members of the royal family have stepped back, changed direction, or embraced more modern roles, Anne has remained remarkably consistent. She does not chase attention, nor does she invite it. Instead, she carries out her responsibilities with a quiet focus that makes her impossible to overlook. Her strength lies not in loud statements, but in steady action. Each year, she completes hundreds of official engagements, often more than any other member of the royal family. This level of dedication has earned her a reputation as one of the most reliable and hard-working figures in public life. There is no interest in distraction, no desire for unnecessary spotlight. For Princess Anne, the role has always been clear. Service comes first, and everything else must follow. However, the conversation takes on a deeper and more emotional tone when it turns to Balmoral Castle. Hidden within the wide rolling landscapes of the Scottish Highlands, Balmoral is far more than a royal residence. It is a place filled with personal meaning, memory, and identity. For Anne, Balmoral was the setting of some of her earliest and most formative experiences. It was where she rode horses across open fields, where she spent long, peaceful summers with her family, and where she began to understand what it truly means to belong to something larger than herself. These were not just childhood moments. They were lessons in duty, connection, and continuity. That connection became even more powerful on the 8th of September 2022, when Queen Elizabeth II passed away within the walls of Balmoral. This was not just a historic event that marked the end of a remarkable reign. For Anne, it was deeply personal. It tied together her sense of duty, her bond with her mother, and her connection to that place in a way that cannot easily be separated. Balmoral is no longer just a location in memory. It is something that carries emotional weight and lasting meaning.
Balmoral Castle, located on 50,000 acres in the Scottish Highlands, was the preferred summer retreat of Queen Elizabeth.
In recent years, however, subtle but important changes have begun to draw attention. Decisions to open parts of Balmoral to the public in 2024 and 2025 introduced a new chapter in its long history. For some, this move represents a step toward greater openness and accessibility, allowing people to connect more closely with royal heritage. But for others, it raises quiet and thoughtful questions about tradition, privacy, and boundaries. Princess Anne, known for her strong principles and careful judgment, is believed to approach these changes with measured consideration rather than immediate approval. She is not someone who reacts quickly or speaks without thought. Instead, she observes, reflects, and weighs every decision against the values she has upheld for decades. At the same time, the growing involvement of extended family members in royal properties has added another layer to the situation. New faces are beginning to appear in places that were once defined by long-standing customs and deeply rooted traditions. But what is it about this private estate that makes it so important? And could its unusual past be the hidden key to a situation the royal family never saw coming? Let's find out. Laura's shocking revelation. Recently, Laura Lopes finally chose to speak out after years of silence about her mother, Queen Camilla. For those who may not recognize her name, Laura is Camilla's daughter from her earlier marriage, long before royal titles and palace life became part of their story. What she revealed surprised many people. She opened up about how her mother's rise to becoming queen deeply affected not only their family, but also her own personal life, career, and sense of identity. According to Laura, being the daughter of a woman who was once viewed by the public as an outsider to the royal family was far from easy. Even though she was raised away from the bright lights of royal life, she could not escape the constant headlines. As a young girl, she often saw her mother described in the media as the third person in the troubled marriage between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. That painful label followed her everywhere. Those words became even more powerful after Diana's famous statement about her marriage. There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
For Laura, this wasn't just a headline or a quote people discussed casually. It became part of her everyday reality. She explained that the way the media portrayed her mother created a heavy shadow over their family life. At home, things were more complex and human, but outside, the world had already made up its mind. Laura admitted that her childhood was not as calm or protected as people might imagine. Although her family tried to shield her from the press, the rumors and gossip still found their way into her daily life. At school and in social settings, she often felt judged, not for anything she had done, but simply because of who her mother was. Friends, teachers, and even strangers sometimes treated her differently, making assumptions about her personality and background. This constant attention forced Laura to grow up faster than most children her age. She learned early on to be careful about who she trusted. It also shaped how she viewed relationships, as she became aware of how easily public opinion could twist private truths. Even as a teenager, she could sense the tension between what she saw at home, her mother's loyalty and affection, and the endless rumors that painted a completely different picture. In 1995, her parents, Camilla and Andrew Parker Bowles, went through a long and painful divorce, largely fueled by the public exposure of Camilla's relationship with Prince Charles. During this difficult time, Laura chose to stand firmly by her mother's side. She supported her, even as the British media became more aggressive and critical. But standing by her mother came at a cost. Laura often found herself pulled into the spotlight, no matter how much she tried to stay out of it. The attention made her uncomfortable, and there were moments when she simply wanted a normal, quiet life. As the years passed, things only became more complicated. When Camilla married Prince Charles in 2005, Laura was suddenly pushed into a world she had never chosen. Unlike Princes William and Harry, who were born into royal life and had years to adjust, Laura entered that world as an adult with little preparation. Many royal insiders noticed that she seemed uneasy in her new role. Public events, formal gatherings, and royal expectations did not come naturally to her. Standing beside her mother, now a key figure in the royal family, often felt overwhelming. While William and Harry moved comfortably within royal traditions, Laura struggled to balance her private life with the demands of public attention. As Camilla's role in the royal family grew, eventually leading to her becoming queen, Laura witnessed something unexpected, a dramatic change in how people viewed her mother. The same woman who had once been heavily criticized slowly gained acceptance and respect from the public. While this transformation was positive in many ways, it also came with a downside. Laura revealed that improving her mother's public image often meant sacrificing their family's privacy. Personal moments became carefully managed, and the line between public duty and private life became harder to protect. Despite everything, Laura expressed deep admiration for her mother. She spoke about Camilla's strength, resilience, and dedication, praising her journey from a controversial figure to queen. When Laura decided to share her story, the public reaction was mixed. Some people saw her honesty as brave, offering a rare glimpse into the hidden struggles behind royal life. Others, however, criticized her for speaking openly about family matters that many believed should remain private. What stood out most in her story was her difficult adjustment to royal life. Unlike her stepbrothers, who had been prepared for their roles from birth, Laura's path was uncertain and challenging. However, her experience reveals a side of royal life that is often overlooked, the emotional cost of being connected to a story much bigger than yourself. How did she eventually carve out her own place within the royal family? And how did she navigate her relationship with Harry and William? let's take a closer look. Sandringham Christmas tension. What was meant to be a warm, cheerful, and intimate Christmas gathering at Sandringham quickly turned into a night that no one present would ever forget. It began exactly as such royal occasions usually do, full of gentle joy and quiet elegance. Soft, golden lights shimmered across the room, laughter floated easily through the air, and the delicate sound of crystal glasses clinking added a sense of refined celebration. Guests arrived expecting the familiar comfort of royal tradition, polite conversations, soft seasonal music, and the calm, graceful atmosphere of a family shaped by centuries of custom. At first, everything appeared perfect. The setting felt almost magical, like something out of a storybook. Children ran happily between tables, their laughter light and carefree. Staff moved smoothly and silently through the room, refilling champagne flutes and ensuring everything remained flawless. The fresh scent of pine from the Christmas decorations blended gently with the warm, inviting smell of freshly baked mince pies. In every corner, there were signs of joy, comfort, and tradition. But beneath all this beauty and calm, something uneasy was slowly taking shape. It was not obvious at first. There were no loud arguments, no sudden disruptions. Instead, it was something quieter, a subtle shift in the mood that only the most observant could notice. It felt like a faint chill creeping into a warm room, something that no glowing fire could quite push away. The smiles were still there, the laughter continued, but there was an almost invisible tension beginning to settle in the background. Then, without warning, Laura Lopes stepped forward. She did not raise her voice or draw attention to herself in any dramatic way. In fact, her words were spoken softly, almost casually, as though she were simply joining in conversation. But there was something sharp, hidden beneath her calm tone. Each word carried a quiet weight, carefully chosen and precisely delivered. Her comment was directed at young Princess Charlotte. At first glance, it might have seemed harmless to someone not paying close attention. There was even the faintest hint of a smile on Laura's face, as though she intended for the remark to pass as light or playful. But the meaning behind her words was clear, and it was unmistakably unkind. In that instant, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. It was as though time itself paused. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Laughter faded into silence. Even guests standing far away, who may not have heard every word, could sense that something had gone wrong. The air grew heavy, filled with a tension that was impossible to ignore. The orchestra, which had been playing softly in the background, seemed unsure of what to do. Their music slowed, then softened, as if they too felt the shift. Servants stood still for a brief moment, trays of drinks forgotten in their hands. Around the room, people exchanged quick, uncertain glances, unsure whether to react or remain still. Behind the scenes, palace aides immediately sensed the seriousness of the moment. This was not a small social mistake that could be easily covered up with a polite laugh or a change of subject. It was something deeper, something that carried the risk of lasting consequences. What made the moment so powerful was not its volume, but its quiet impact. Laura had not shouted or caused a scene. Instead, her words slipped through the room like a blade, subtle, controlled, yet deeply cutting. In doing so, she broke through the polished surface of the evening, exposing tensions that had likely been hidden for a long time. For Princess Charlotte, the moment was especially painful. It was a sudden and harsh introduction to the complicated realities of royal life. In that single exchange, her innocence met the difficult truth that even within grand palaces, kindness is not always guaranteed, and words can carry more weight than they seem. As the silence lingered, an unspoken understanding spread among those present. It was not announced or acknowledged aloud, but it was clearly felt. Those familiar with the quiet signals of power and status recognized it instantly. Something important had shifted. Eventually, the room seemed to breathe again. Conversations slowly resumed, though they were more cautious now. The music picked up once more, but it lacked the earlier warmth. Smiles returned, but they no longer felt entirely natural. The damage, however, had already been done. What had begun as a joyful holiday gathering had quietly turned into something else. The evening, which should have been filled with laughter and festive cheer, now carried the weight of a moment that could not be undone. But who actually saw it happen with their own eyes? And would she respond or simply watch in silence? Let's find out. Princess Anne breaks silence. Among all the members of the royal family, Princess Anne is known for being the most private and the least interested in fame or public attention. She does not enjoy being in the spotlight, and she has always preferred to stay away from media drama. For many years, she has followed a very strict personal rule: never give the media anything that can be turned into a story. In other words, she avoids feeding the press machine in any way that could create headlines or fuel gossip. Because of this long-standing behavior, Princess Anne has built a strong reputation as someone who stays silent, no matter what is happening around her. She focuses on duty, responsibility, and work rather than public arguments or personal exposure. So when someone like her suddenly chooses to speak out, it immediately becomes a major moment. It is not something she does lightly, and it is not something she does often. The documentary connected to this moment did not try to soften its message. Even its title was bold and direct. There was nothing gentle or carefully worded about it. Instead, it openly suggested that it would look into claims, behaviors, and events that, according to the program, had been kept away from the public for many years by the royal household. From the very beginning, the tone was clear. The opening statement set the direction immediately and left no room for confusion. It claimed that the real Meghan was very different from the image the public had been shown. The documentary suggested that what people see in public is not the full truth. It went further by saying that the version of Meghan seen by the world does not match her real personality or behavior behind closed doors. Think carefully about what that kind of statement means. It is not a simple disagreement or a mild criticism. It is not saying that there were misunderstandings or that things were sometimes difficult. Instead, it is making a much stronger claim. It is suggesting that what the public has seen is not reality at all, but a carefully shaped performance. In other words, it implies that people have been watching a public image rather than the true person. And according to the documentary, Princess Anne is now stepping forward to challenge that image directly. The impact of these claims was immediate. Within just a few hours after the broadcast aired, reactions spread quickly and forcefully. The shock did not build slowly over time. It erupted almost instantly across media outlets and social platforms. News headlines did not appear cautiously or quietly. Instead, they spread like explosions, grabbing attention everywhere at once. What made the situation even more intense was the tone of the reporting. The headlines were not based on guesses or vague rumors. Instead, they were shaped around a small number of very specific questions. These questions did not feel like ordinary gossip meant to attract readers. They sounded more serious, almost like the beginning of an official inquiry or investigation. People began to wonder what would come next and whether further details would be revealed. The story no longer felt like simple entertainment news, though it started to feel like something much deeper, something that could develop into a larger and more serious public discussion involving the royal family. Why did Princess Anne remain silent for such a long time? And what could have been so serious that it pushed the most disciplined member of the royal family to finally speak out in public? Let's find out. Laura Lopes' tiara controversy. As the first shock from the insult directed at Princess Charlotte began to fade, a more disturbing rumor started to spread through Sandringham's grand halls. Guests began whispering carefully, looking around as if afraid to be overheard. The story claimed that Laura Lopes had not only spoken carelessly, but had gone much further. She had touched one of Princess Diana's most treasured items, the Cambridge lover's knot tiara. And even worse, she had worn it. At first, many people refused to believe it. It seemed impossible that anyone would break such a serious, unspoken rule. Royal traditions and long-standing etiquette made it clear that certain boundaries must never be crossed. The lover's knot tiara was not just jewelry. It was deeply tied to memory, grief, and the legacy of the late Princess of Wales. Even touching it without permission felt wrong, and wearing it without approval felt like stepping into Diana's place in a way that many would see as disrespectful and shocking. Soon, however, it became clear that this was not a public event or an official inspection of royal jewels. Instead, it appeared to have been a private moment, hidden from the public and away from official rules. A leaked photo from someone inside the palace showed Laura Lopes in a private room, wearing the tiara on her head and smiling. To those who heard about it, the image was deeply troubling. It suggested not simple curiosity, but a serious breach of trust and tradition. People close to palace life understood how serious this was. It was not just about manners or respect. It felt like a symbolic act that crossed a major line. The tiara represented Princess Diana's memory and place in history, and using it without permission seemed like an attempt to step into that legacy. Many saw it as an intrusion into something sacred, something that did not belong to her. Inside the palace, the mood grew tense. Attention turned to Princess Anne, who had already stayed silent during earlier tensions. Now she reportedly had clear evidence that a major boundary had been crossed. The earlier insult to Princess Charlotte had already caused concern, but this new incident involving Diana's tiara made everything far more serious. What began as a small spark was now becoming a much bigger conflict. In the quiet, cold atmosphere of Sandringham, it was clear that something serious was coming. However, respect, tradition, and royal legacy all seemed to be under pressure, and action could no longer be avoided. But what history is hidden within this tiara, and could Laura really belong to the tradition and legacy it stands for? What's the public encounter? Let's find out. Laura's comment fallout. It didn't take long before Laura's comments started spreading through the gathering. At first, it was nothing more than a quiet murmur, passed from one guest to another in soft, cautious tones. But within a short time, that murmur turned into full-blown gossip, moving quickly through the corners of the castle, like a spark catching dry grass. As the night went on, the story grew. Small details of Laura's remarks slipped into conversations among guests who had close links to journalists and media figures. No one officially confirmed anything, and nobody was brave enough to speak on record. But that didn't stop the information from leaking out. By the time hours had passed, the whispers had escaped the castle walls and were already shaping early headlines. The reaction outside was immediate and intense. Many people across Britain were shocked and angry. Social media quickly filled with posts defending Princess Anne, praising her for her decades of quiet, tireless service. To them, she represented duty, discipline, and loyalty, and Laura's words were seen as deeply disrespectful. Newspapers soon followed, publishing long features about Anne's lifelong charity work and dedication, almost as if reminding the public why she deserved such deep respect. But not everyone agreed. A smaller group of voices defended Laura's perspective. They argued that Anne's traditional, low-profile style belonged to an older era. In their eyes, younger royals like William and Catherine represented a more modern and relatable future for the monarchy. For Anne herself, the real pain wasn't coming from the newspapers or social media. She had faced public criticism for decades and had long learned how to stay composed under pressure. What hurt this time was where the comment came from. It wasn't the public this time. It was family. That made it feel sharper, more personal, and far harder to ignore. William was deeply affected by it as well. Watching his aunt quietly endure the situation with dignity only increased his frustration. In his view, Anne's silence was admirable, but it was not enough. He believed that some things required a firm response, especially when respect within the family had been crossed. Over the following weeks, the public continued to watch closely. Every appearance involving William, Anne, and Laura was carefully observed and analyzed. Official smiles appeared in photographs, and polite greetings were exchanged at events. But beneath the surface, the tension remained. Nothing had truly been resolved. The first major test came at a glamorous charity gala in London, a high-profile event aimed at raising funds for children's hospitals. On the surface, it was meant to be a night of unity, with the royal family standing together for a noble cause. But for those aware of the situation, there was a sense of expectation in the air. Inside the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers shone brightly over a sea of elegant guests. Soft orchestral music filled the air, while guests in formal gowns and tailored suits moved gracefully through the room. champagne glasses in hand. When William and Catherine arrived, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Applause rose from the crowd, and camera flashes lit up the entrance. William appeared calm and composed, carrying himself with the confidence expected of the future king. Catherine, dressed in an elegant deep sapphire gown, greeted the crowd with a warm and effortless smile that immediately charmed those around her. Together, they projected the image of stability and grace that the monarchy wanted the world to see. Yet beneath William's calm expression, there was unease. He knew Laura was in the room. He had already seen her name on the guest list and had been mentally preparing for this moment all evening. Catherine, noticing his tension, gently touched his arm in a quiet attempt to steady him. Across the ballroom, Laura stood with her mother, Camilla. Camilla stayed close, her hand resting firmly yet protectively on Laura's arm as she guided her through conversations. Laura herself looked uncomfortable. Although she maintained a polite smile, her posture was stiff and her eyes revealed clear nervousness. She too knew that a confrontation with William might be unavoidable. Near the edge of the ballroom, as guests moved between conversations, William and Catherine found themselves face to face with Camilla and Laura. For a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze. William gave a slight nod, polite but distant. His expression carried no warmth, only controlled formality. Laura tried to respond with a small smile, but it quickly faded under his intense gaze. She looked away, then back again, visibly uncomfortable, as if hoping the moment would end quickly. Sensing the situation, Camilla acted quickly. She gently took Laura's arm and guided her away from the group, whispering something softly as she moved. What do you think about Princess Anne's action against Camilla's daughter? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.